Handling behaviors this way is a game changer. Hi friends, this is Miss B with The Formed Home. I have a bit of a sore throat today, so bear with me. I'm a former preschool teacher and a mom of two. I've also had some experience working with kindergarten and other classrooms in the early elementary ages. Now, when you're working in a preschool or in a public school and you have 20 some odd children that you're trying to manage, you need to have the best techniques, and especially since you're trying to encourage them to make the best choices. And so something that we used that I often use at home, I try to look at both positive and negative feedback and what exactly I'm bringing to the table. Let me explain. Positive feedback is a reward that you give for something. So maybe this is giving candy or screen time or some other prize. It could also be something more emotional, like giving a hug, a kiss, your time and attention. Negative feedback, on the other hand, is the opposite of that and has more of a punishment to it. So maybe jumping on the bed, you end up falling off and hurting your head, or touching fire and getting burnt, or you splash in the puddles, you get really muddy and wet and have to change your clothes and it's uncomfortable. That also translates to emotional times too. So maybe negative feedback would be ignoring them. Now, every choice we make has positive and negative feedbacks, and we have to think what kind of feedback our children are getting with the behaviors they're exhibiting. Something I did in the kindergarten classrooms was I had a jar with jewels, and every time someone did something good, a good behavior, they got a jar in the jewel. And once the jar filled up, we got a prize. And we wanted to fill that jar up as much as we can. We wanted lots of prizes because obviously the better behaviors we see, the better our classroom is, easier it is to manage, the more we learn, and the more we learn to read, which of course I love. So at home, we may not have jewels in a jar, but we can look at some of the things we do to give positive feedback to children for behaviors that we want to see. There was one time a parent came up to me and said that every time they took their child away from cables to make sure their child was not playing with the cables or touching the cables, they loved it because they got a nice good hug from daddy. And that's what he did. Every time he grabbed his child, they did a nice hug. Now, this is a positive feedback for a negative behavior. Now, there's other things besides positive negative feedback you can do, like absolutely preventing kids from even touching the cables in the first place and making sure they're nicely tucked away and everything's safe so that you don't really have to have this kind of debate going on. But I think that kind of behavior also shows that the child needs more hugs from daddy. So sometimes you want to have more time with your children when they're doing good versus when they're doing bad. When a child is doing good behavior, you want to make sure that they are seen. You want to give them lots of hugs, lots of love. You can say, I noticed that you did this. I noticed that you did that. In my classroom experience, saying, I noticed that you put this away, or something of the like, saying, I noticed. That is a very neutral thing where children can kind of see, oh, this thing happened, this person paid attention to it, and they can associate a good feeling with that all on their own. And when they have that good feeling on their own, it's not about waiting for your parents to say good job. It's about, oh, this feels good to do. I get attention for it and it feels good to do, versus you're waiting for someone to give you that praise. I digress. So if a child is acting out to get your attention, then I think that's a signal that maybe they need more attention aside from the bad behavior. With just you just loving them, some quality time as family, some quality time parent and child, and that is often the best thing for behaviors. Sometimes you get behaviors because of positive and negative feedback, but other times you get behaviors because of developmental needs or cognitive needs. If your child is autistic, Down syndrome, whatever, that is a whole different ballgame. Then they need to consult their doctor and their pediatrician and need to consult some experts to find the best strategies to help in your home. Now, something for negative behavior is that sometimes they're a little overstimulated. You have children that don't know how to cope with emotions, and so sometimes they're having 2 or 3 emotions at the same time and they don't know what to do with it. They're angry, sad, frustrated, mad, the whole thing. They feel ignored, they feel lonely, they could feel a whole bunch of emotions all at the same time, and they don't know how to cope with it, which results with lots of negative behaviors. Maybe your child is throwing a tantrum at the store. Maybe your child is running away from you, doing all kinds of things. When that is happening, when your child is emotionally off the rails, you want to give them a time in. Now, a time in is different from a time out. A time in is when you're taking your child aside like you would with a timeout, but you're staying with them. You gotta make sure that the time you spend in this time in is appropriate, like you would with a timeout. But the point of the time in is for them to have an emotional reset. It's for them to take a breath, to rest their body, and then when they're done doing all that, you can have a little chat and say, what's going on? And just try to communicate. A lot of behavior problems happen when children don't feel like they're understood. And so taking the time to make sure that you understand what is wrong, that is very important. Once you understand what is bothering your child, you want to provide a way of coping that they can use in those times. So let's say your child is throwing things at another child. You talk about how, hey, next time use your words. Tell mommy if they were biting you first or kicking you first or something. Tell mommy and daddy if they weren't giving you a turn and that's why you threw those things. We use our words first. Another thing is you talk about what they can do and say, hey, we don't climb here, we climb at the playground. Should we get this stuff done so we can go to the playground and get our climbs out? I'm noticing that you want to kick things. We can kick a ball or we can kick the air like we do for mommy's exercise, right? Those are the things we kick. Other things we don't kick. We just kick balls and kick the air. That's important too, that phrasing of what you can do versus what you can't do. Children want to hear the positive, what they can do, right? So saying, yes, we can do this. Yes, we can do that. If you're saying no, no, no all the time, that really shuts people down. It shuts me as an adult down, and certainly enough, it can shut down a child. As much as you can, say yes, yes, yes. This is what we do. This is how we do it. If you want to kick, this is how we kick. If we climb, this is how we climb. Let's go do things the appropriate way. This is how we deal with these feelings. There's other ways you can cope too. I remember there's one episode of Bluey where everyone was feeling down and Chili, the mom, said, hey, let's all sing and dance and do a dancing competition and see if we can get each other out. I forget the exact name of it. You guys are gonna burn me alive for that one. Do you recall? Similar to that Bluey episode, we can also notice that we are in a bit of a funk, that we need a bit of a reset. We need to set our emotions right and help them find a way of coping, which could be music, which could be reading, which could be doing a quick little finger game, which could be doing a high five, practicing smiling, doing a smiling competition, taking a moment to laugh. You just have to say, you know what? You look like you're not feeling great. I'm not feeling great. Let's do something fun for 1 minute before we go back in and just do something fun. Now, I've talked a lot about the positive, but the negative is also equally important. And obviously, we don't want to do anything abusive to our kids. However, there are times when we have to show that they don't get attention this way. Let's say your child likes to leave a lot of toys out and they have toys all over the table, all over the floors, and then they ask you for new toys. Or they want to play a game with you, or they want to do something else. That is where you have the natural consequence of there's nowhere here for us to play. There's nowhere for us to put our toys, so we can't play together. Maybe if we clean this up, we can play together. That is a natural consequence as well as a way of enforcing the rules of the house. Now, the younger your children are, the more help they will need with cleanup. A child's mind does not have the focus or attention to clean up really well or for long periods of time. So you really do want to help your child as they clean up. So if they are 3, they probably have a 10-minute attention span. And when it comes to cleanup, their executive function might go down a little bit and they have more like 5 minutes of focus. You want to reward that 5 minute of focus and perhaps even see if you keep encouraging that 5 minutes, maybe it'll grow bigger than that. But when you're first starting out, their focus might be really, really small. This example of your consequences being very natural, where it's developmentally appropriate, it's by age, you are helping out, you are showing love. That is the most important thing. Always show love, always, always, always. That is the most important thing for your child at any age, is to know that they are loved. And of course, once you've all cleaned up and so everything is done, and of course your child has helped you with cleanup, you're not doing it on your own, but if they've helped you clean up for a bit, they can have their fun time with mom and dad and they can start relaxing and know that they did something good and revel in that positive reinforcement. This leads me to the last thing I want to say about behavior management, which is consistency. Now, I talk about consistency with reading. This also plays into behaviors as well. Children thrive off of routine. They thrive off of it. If children don't know what's going to happen next, they're going to keep pushing buttons, doing different things, trying to see what exactly will happen when they do X, Y, or Z, because they don't know what will happen when they do X, Y, or Z. Let's say they're throwing balls at their brother and all you say is don't do that, and you just kind of leave it, and then they keep throwing balls at their brothers and you keep saying don't do that, and they keep throwing and throwing and you just keep saying don't do that, don't do that. Well, at that point they don't really have much of a consequence besides you giving them the attention. They know that on a consistent basis you're not going to help them with the problem. Now, if you consistently made efforts and consequences to them hitting their brother or doing things with their brother, then something else might happen. Let's say there's a different scenario where that same family has a boy hitting their brother, and instead of saying don't do that, they try different techniques. So one day they might say, oh, don't do that. If you do, I'm going to count to 3 and I'm going to come get you. 1, 2, 3. But by that time, think of how many times that brother has hit the other brother in the time of you counting to 3. Sometimes I use counting, but I never use it in this way because there's a safety concern and you can't let it go on for 3 seconds. Then they notice that it's not working, and so as soon as they're doing it with the brother, they take the brother away. But they just did that once because they're really tired and they can't do that all the time. And so the next time their brother does it, they hit their brother and they just say, don't do that. Then one time the kid is hitting his brother, and instead of saying don't do that or counting, you decide, let's take him away from the scene, give him a time in, do all that kind of stuff, figure out what's going on and redirect and get him on a different track. You do that and that's all well and good, but then the next time that kid hits their brother again with a ball and you are too tired to do that whole thing again, and you just say don't do that, don't do that, don't do that, and you're back in the cycle. Now this child has had 3 different forms of consequences. They've had you just simply standing there saying don't do that, they've had you counting to 3, and then they've had you taking them away and redirecting them, and they don't know which consequence is going to happen next. That is why you need consistency. Because if you're just going to say don't do that, then they know that they can get away with it and they'll keep doing that behavior. If they know that you're going to redirect them every time and that you're going to do as much as you can to make sure they're not hitting their brother, which I highly encourage, if you do that every time, then they know that when they hit their brother, that is going to happen and they stop doing that. We need to be consistent with our consequences, but also consistent with our coping too. So same thing if you're helping your child cope with being angry. You need to give the same solutions for them being angry so that they can remember to practice it. If you only mention it one time, they might forget that way of coping and not remember how to do it. This was my broad, comprehensive view for how to handle behaviors. And definitely as a parent, you need to adjust as you work along with your child and as you figure out more of what they're feeling, how they're reacting to things, and what will help them versus not help them. Just remember that managing behaviors is key for children learning. They cannot learn if they're busy trying to figure out how to cope with different feelings. When they feel nurtured, loved, and safe, and they know that there's a clear line of communication between you and them, you'll be able to accomplish reading much better, as well as other learning activities. Thank you for watching, and please subscribe to see more videos. Bye!